Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Dais, a podcast about the stories taking place in and around El Paso County, Colorado. I'm your host, Scott Anderson, and today I am joined by Dr. Terry Bramschreiber, the director of the Space Foundation Discovery Center. How are you doing today, Terry?
I'm doing great, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. I've actually never been out to the Space Foundation before, so this is a really great experience for me. But before we get started, I wanted to quickly add that if listeners are interested in more stories about people doing good in and around El Paso County, or hearing from county leadership about local government priorities and how they operate, you can find additional episodes of this podcast on your podcast platform of choice. But to get started, Terry, I was wondering if you could give me some background about yourself and how you came to be associated with the Space Foundation.
Yeah, sure, Scott. Well, I'm not quite a native of Colorado Springs, but I got here very young. I've been here longer than most people have been in town. Went to high school here, went to college here, and I spent 27 years as a public educator. 13 of those were as a science teacher and 14 as an administrator. And a couple years ago, I retired as a high school principal of a local school. And I joined the Space Foundation, as an employee in 2021, first as an educator, and later I became a program manager, and most recently, I am now the director of the Space Foundation Discovery Center. But although I've only been an employee since 2021, I've been a teacher liaison, that's a program we have here, since 2006, and even did some teacher professional development with Space Foundation in the 90s. So I have a history with the foundation, and I've been working with them for quite a long time.
What attracted you to the Space Foundation?
Well, as a young teacher, I was always looking for professional development, and I can't even remember where I came across it, but I found a spring break professional development opportunity. So I spent my spring break learning about space and learning how to teach kids about space.
That's what all the cool people do, all right? Don't let anyone tell you different.
Yeah, well, I was at that point, I was probably too poor to go on vacation, so I figured, hey, I will just increase my craft the best I can.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So there was a tiny little building. I want to say it was on 21st Street or A Street or somewhere over there. I don't even know if the building exists anymore, but me and a few other teachers sat there and, learned a lot about how to teach space.
Awesome. And so can you share some background about the Space Foundation itself and what the main mission of the organization is?
Yeah, so the Space Foundation was founded in 1983. It's a nonprofit, and they offer a gateway to education and information and collaboration for space exploration and space-inspired industries that define the global space ecosystem. There's really three big parts of the foundation, broken into three divisions. Symposium 365, the Center for Innovation and Education, and the Global Alliance. And I work primarily with the Center for Innovation and Education.
So with your part being specifically tied to the Center for Innovation and Education, can you tell me a little bit more about that pillar and how it exists within the Space Foundation?
Okay, there are really two prongs of the Center of Innovation and Education. There's a Leadership Academy, which provides programming for teachers and students, and their goal is really creating a pipeline from school to the workforce. And then the Space Foundation Discovery Center, we provide programming for K through 12 students and even beyond that age group, and even for adults who want to do some team building related to space here at the museum.
Awesome. And so you have a couple of big events coming up that I want to talk about. We're recording this in March, and in April, it's sort of the highlight month for the Space Foundation, you could say. The first one I want to talk about is Yuri's Night, which is coming up on April 7th. Can you tell me about that event and why it's so important within the community?
Yeah, Yuri's Night is sometimes called a World Space Party, and it's basically a party or an event held around the world every year, right around April 12th. Because that happens to be the date that Yuri Gagarin became the first human to venture into space. And it's also the anniversary of the first launch of the space shuttle. That was in April 12th, 1981. So around the world, there are these Yuri's Night parties going on. We've been doing them here at the Space Foundation since 2015. It's been held every year except for 2020 when it was canceled due to the pandemic. Mm-hmm. But this is the kickoff to our space symposium. So this party brings people together. Let me talk a little bit about this one this year. We are offering a lot of different things. Typically, it is held at the Space Foundation Discovery Center, but this year we happen to be renovating, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But if you go to this party, you will be able to experience playing with robots. We have a lot of science demonstrations. There's obviously great food and drink. You can meet astronauts. You can do all kinds of STEM activities and really get to bump elbows with people in the space community. Now, like I said, that is the kickoff to the Space Symposium. And this year is the 39th Space Symposium put on by the Space Foundation. And this symposium is the largest congregation of space professionals in the world. It brings together over 10,000 professionals from really all corners of the space community: industry, government, defense, scientific community, technological innovators, educational institutions. Anyone who's anyone in space has probably been to this symposium at one time or another. And that is being held at the Broadmoor. But going back to Yuri's Night, unfortunately, it is not being held at the Discovery Center because we're renovating, so it will be held at the Cheyenne Mountain Resort this year.
So for Yuri's Night, is that something that's open to all ages, or what people are going to be able to attend the event?
You have to be 21 to attend Yuri's Night, but it is open to the general public, and there is a general admission cost, and there's also a VIP experience cost. Now, that VIP will get you access to some of the astronauts a little bit earlier. You get a cooking demonstration and a meet and greet with celebrity chef Brother Luck. You get spirit tasting from the Black Hat Distillery. You get a VIP gift bag. There's a private open bar and obviously gourmet hors d'oeuvres. There's a red carpet photo opportunity. And just to let you know, some of the astronauts that have been to or have participated in Yuri's Night, some people may have heard of. Buzz Aldrin is one of them. You may have heard of Ron Sega or Kathy Thornton or Dwayne Digger Carey. There have been Livingston Holder. There have been some important people in space that have been here, and it's quite a thrill to meet them.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned the Space Symposium just a minute ago. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the symposium itself and why it's so important to the space industry, but also for the El Paso County region.
I'll start with the El Paso County region. Like we said, it brings over 10,000 people to this event from all around the world. It's held at the Broadmoor, but hotels fill up, restaurants and bars fill up. This is a great boost to the Colorado Springs economy. And there are over 200 space and aerospace companies here in the area. So it's important to let them talk about what they do, help them meet potential business partners and so forth, really to make those connections that they may not ordinarily be able to do in person.
Awesome. And then as someone who personally is a bit of a space nut and was growing up, the first thing I ever wanted to do when, you go to class and they're like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? Was an astronaut. Of course, who didn't want to be an astronaut? So I love space. I love talking about space. But in your opinion, as someone who works for the Space Foundation at the Discovery Center, which is a museum for space, why is space so cool? Why do people love talking about space and learning about space?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. As a science teacher for a long time, I learned pretty quickly that kids are interested in three things: dinosaurs, ghosts, and space. Okay.
You know what? You hit all three of them. That's exactly correct.
Right. Well, in science, ghosts doesn't necessarily fit in real well. At least you can't empirically study those.
Fair enough.
But dinosaurs in space, you can. And space is something that is really for everybody, and that's something the Space Foundation wants to pass on to kids. Space is for everyone. There's going to be a whole new space economy that's going to become. There has been a space economy in the past, but we are embarking on a new one. Our intention is to colonize the moon, actually have a long-term presence on the moon, which could mean building habitats there, and there could be the chance for the ordinary person to go to the moon, if you can imagine that. And this might be a few years off, but you need a whole new space economy there. We will need all kinds of professionals, not just science and engineers. We'll need artists. We'll need healthcare workers, almost any career path that you can think of on Earth, we will need that in space. And to me, that's extremely exciting. It's exciting to the kids that we teach here, and I want them all to know that they can be a part of it regardless of what their interests are.
Wow. I'm not going to lie. You just got me on board for doing some work out on the moon. I'd love to help colonize the moon. So whenever we get there, just give me a call. Let me
Absolutely.
know. That would be incredible. So can you talk about some of those programs that the Space Foundation Discovery Center offers? So we've talked a lot about the Space Foundation in general, but your wheelhouse, the Discovery Center, I want to learn more about that and what programs exist for the people who visit.
Yeah, first I'll say that, if any school groups that we take, like I said, we serve kids from pre-K to 12. So field trips all the time. We have several labs in our museum that will be opening. It's going to be opening later this spring after our renovation. But we're going to have a drone zone. We're going to have a Mars robotics lab that's been updated. We have what's called a Science on the Sphere, which is basically, it's kind of the opposite of a planetarium. In a planetarium, you lie back and you look at the ceiling and you're in the center, whereas this Science on a Sphere, we have a sphere hovering in the middle of the room and we can show planets and things like that.
Oh, wow.
We're having an additive manufacturing lab where we'll have 3D printing and so forth that the public and school groups can come and visit. And we're going to have 8 new exhibits opening up. We are going to have a drone zone where the public can actually fly drones. We have an additive manufacturing lab, which is sponsored by Boeing. And in that lab, people will be able to use 3D printers and laser cutters and things like that. We have an updated Mars robotics laboratory, which is sponsored by Lockheed Martin. And we have an updated Science on a Sphere, which is sponsored by Northrop Grumman. So we're very proud of these sponsors that we have and be partnering with these great communities because they are extremely interested in educating students as well. But within the museum, like I said, we have field trip opportunities, but for the general public, we have a number as well. We have a homeschool day once a month. We've been offering those off-site at the Pikes Peak Library District since we've been closed, but those will be coming back to our building. We have what's called a Tesla's Toolbox, which are for higher level kids, middle and high school kids learning about physics and things like that. We have a Small Steps, Giant Leaps program for preschoolers where we read books and show them Science on the Sphere. We have star parties at the museum where we can look and see what's up at the night sky. We have astronomy club for high school students that meets. And we are pairing with a lot of different groups in the community. We've been doing a lot more of that since we've been closed, but we've been pairing with groups out in Banning Lewis to do star parties out there. We've been up to Elizabeth for a day there. So we are open to a lot of partnerships, and hopefully we can continue that even when we open.
No, and that's really great. I actually wanted to get into that and ask you about how working with other organizations in the area, out in the community, have benefited the programs that you're working on. You mentioned, pairing with Banning Lewis and the Pikes Peak Library District even to hold some of these programs while the Discovery Center has been renovating. Can you talk a little bit more about those collaboration efforts that you've had?
Yeah, like I said, we've been pairing together with a lot of different organizations, but what we like about it is we get to reach a lot more kids than we would that are just coming into our doors. We are the area's only space-themed museum, and partnering with a lot of these groups helps us to reach a lot more people. Even if they don't come down to the museum, or maybe they don't even know that we're here, we get to talk to a lot of kids and their parents. We get to educate them about space and just talk about all the different opportunities that we offer.
So another thing that I want to talk about, and maybe this will be a little bit selfish of me, but are there volunteer opportunities that exist for people who are interested in being a part of the Space Foundation or the Discovery Center more specifically?
Absolutely. We have a lot of volunteer opportunities. If you're interested in volunteering at the symposium itself, we have over 100 volunteers that help us with that event. But if you want to volunteer here in the museum, we have a number of opportunities there. You do have to be at least 15 years old. Some of our docents are amazing. We literally have a docent who strapped Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong into into the Eagle on Apollo 11.
Oh, wow.
We have pictures of a 26-year-old docent strapping them in. So
that's awesome.
There's a lot of people in the space industry in this area, like we said, and a lot of them like to come and tell their stories. So a lot of our adults who do have experience there, in that industry anyway, they like to help with the gallery, talking about some of the artifacts that we have they actually worked on and helped create even. You can help work in the labs. You can run the Mars Robotics Lab if you want to do a presentation on science on a sphere, if you want to fly drones with the general public, if you know about 3D printing and want to help teach the public about that. You can even work in curation and collections if you don't want to interact with the public, or in the facilities. You can help us build and clean exhibits. There's so many possible opportunities. And even when we do outreach at a lot of these different events, often we'll want volunteers there, just to help talk to people, help bring them into our table, or help out with any activities that we might be doing with the general public.
And if people are interested in being volunteers, how can they go about finding out more information or getting in touch with you to let them know they want to do that?
Yeah, the easiest way is just to go to discoverspace.org. That'll take you right to the Space Foundation Discovery Center page. And from there, you should be able to find all the information you want on any of our programs, volunteer opportunities, the symposium, Yuri's Night, all the great things the Space Foundation has to offer.
Awesome. And then before we close the conversation today, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to add anything else you think would be important for listeners to know about.
Well, we don't have the date set yet for the opening of our renovation, but it'll be later this spring. We're going to have a huge grand opening, so we hope to see everybody there. Like I said, you'll get to see our new labs, our new exhibits. We're going to have a lot more interactives. We're going to have just upgrading facilities. It's a $3.5 million project that we are pouring into here. And, we are working very hard on it to make the best possible experience related to space that you can have.
And if someone, again, maybe myself, is interested in keeping track of those renovation updates, where can I go to make sure I know exactly when I can expect that to open?
Yeah, well, we will definitely be making a lot of noise once we are getting ready to open. But again, discoverspace.org will take you right to the place, and all our information is lying there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Bramschreiber. I really appreciate you taking the time today and for all the work that you do here at the Discovery Center with the Space Foundation. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Hope to see you at the grand opening.
If you're interested in listening to additional episodes of Beyond the Dais, be sure to look for us on Podbean or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.